It's important to understand that at the very base of piano technique, there is a cross. You need to have ability to create music horizontally and vertically at the same time. Horizontal line in music is what we talked about in one of our previous episodes, is how we feel the connection between the notes through internal singing, and this is a portal, a gate to express our energy, our feelings through playing, and to control our fingers. Vertical line, so horizontal line is all about internal singing. Vertical line is about what we are imagining, or to be more specific, what kind of sounds we are imagining in our mind when we play. And let our touch be only the expression of that thought. When you look at the score, it's essential that you can read every note in your mind. Again, to be less abstract here, it's not just hearing the melody, but approaching every single note in a very specific way, including all the notes in the chords. And if there are 10 notes between two hands in chords, approaching every single note in the chord at the same time, simultaneously, this way. We're gonna call it sound imagination. And it's gonna include three elements, three aspects. Number one is ability to hear the correct pitch of the note. So if someone asks you to imagine G, you imagine it in absolutely the right pitch. It's the height of the sound. This pitch doesn't necessarily need to be imagined in the sound of a specific instrument, not piano, not violin. It's more like a light, more almost like an echo of your own voice when you imagine it. Second is in what texture, in what type of texture you're going to imagine that pitch. That directly will affect the sensations in your muscles. I'll give you an example. Right now, try to imagine that G. I don't know, I'm saying that G because I'm using that Lumix G camera and there's G right in front of me when I look at the camera. So try to imagine that G in the texture of fire, or even maybe sparks of the fire, and notice how it would make your muscles get more tense and kind of ready to express that bright and energetic sound. Now on the contrary, try to imagine that pitch in the texture of more like water, in the liquid texture of water, similar to the one that you feel when you play with pedal. You feel those vibrations that are floating in the air around you. Notice now how that sensation, how the texture in your imagination melts the muscles in your arms. And I promise you, if you come to the piano and you try to touch the key as an expression of that sound imagination, of that, okay, you hear that G, you hear that height of the sound, and you imagine it in this watery liquid texture. And if you approach with that sensation, the keyboard, your touch and your tone will be absolutely different. you will feel that you almost allow the sound to vibrate. You almost support the ability of what the sound, what that string and hammer can both create. You don't suppress the sound with unnecessary force when you touch the key. And the third element of sound imagination would be exploring the possibility of actually moving the sound in your mind. You can move the same pitch without changing that pitch to the right or to the left. You can move it in any possible direction, but for piano playing exactly, it would mean much more. It would be more efficient if you imagine the notes to the right or to the left. And now when you come to the piano, when you touch the key, you will notice that you will touch it with not straight, not vertically, which would create tension in the low part of your wrist, but actually with a little bit of horizontal movement. And maybe you will include your wrist motion here. And again, the movement of your wrist will just express the imagination of that sound. And again, it's very important to mention here that any movement, especially with your wrist, you need to make with very relaxed, empty, and weak hand. And we addressed that in one of our previous episodes. So the three aspects of sound imagination is imagining the pitch of a sound and the right texture that would benefit your muscle sensation, your touch and tone, and with the right movement that would let your wrist, in Russia we say sing, or another way to say, to let the wrist maintain that healthy tension without any force. I would invite you to explore this just maybe with one sound. Just spend the whole day working on it. And this is a skill that will not come to you overnight. And that's why I've created this program that will help you to develop this ability to imagine every single note and connect those notes in your mind as well. That's another skill that we can talk about later, how to imagine the notes sequentially. And in the book Mastery of Piano Technique, with that book you can help yourself to develop this ability to just open Rachmaninoff concerto and imagine every single note in the right height and the right pitch and the right texture and with the right movement. And then use your body just to express what's on your mind. And of course my own testimony here will be that to be able to play that final exam to get my master's degree from Moscow Conservatory and prepare a 40 minutes program, which also included a second concerto by Rachmaninoff. I was preparing that concerto in my head only, and I only touched it maybe a few days before going on stage, and I performed this concerto with my professor in the right tempo without any mistakes, and I didn't feel any pain, any uncomfortable sensations in my hands. And that's the power of mental practice. But of course, you need to know what exactly to imagine when we talk about mental practice.